A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to week 5 of the semester, and I hope that all of you are doing well, and also I hope that you are keeping yourself safe. Now, for this week, we have a few things that we will be definitely going over. So, first of all, we'll have a look at our to-do lists for the week. So, on week 5, which is this particular week, you are required to attend your Zoom-based lecture class, which you are doing at the moment. Moreover, you have your lecture 4 base quiz, which will be in the week 5 section of the Moodle shell. Moreover, okay, you are to attempt your tutorial questions. You are provided with a tutorial discussion forum. So you have to answer the questions. Upon answering the questions, you shall be provided with the sample answers. Now, please do note that if you do not provide the answers from your end, sample answers may not be released to you. Moreover, we have our tutorial discussion session, which is on Fridays, 2 to 4 p.m., and it'll be Zoom based. So what we normally do is we discuss our case studies in those in that particular class. Moreover, few reminders, please continue to work on your critic writing. It's due within 2 weeks' time. And furthermore, you are to start your preparations on the mid-semester exam. Your mid-semester exam, it will be in week 7, and you will be advised on the layout. Actually, I have advised the layout beforehand, but I will be reiterating on the layout of the mid-semester exam straight after this. Okay, and should you have any questions or queries, please feel free to contact me through my email address, or you may always drop a message on Moodle. Now, just going over my assessment section of the Moodle shell, your critic writing, please do note it is due on the 1st of September. Now, those of you who have already submitted, thank you for taking out your time and also submitting it well before time. I appreciate your efforts. Moreover, your mid-semester exam will be opening up on the 5th of September. So the 5th of September is 2 weeks from now. This is week 5. So week 6, week 7. Now, 5th of September falls on Sunday. Okay, so it will open up 6 a.m. Sunday, and you are given approximately 1 week, exactly 1 week actually. In fact, more than 1 week. You're given more than 1 week, 1 week and a few additional hours. Which will close it on the 12th of September. Now, the outline is as such. You have 20 multiple choice questions with this word 20 marks, and you're given a time allocation of 30 minutes. You have short answer questions, which is worth 20 marks. They are close to about 10 questions altogether, less than 10 in fact. I've already prepared your mid-semester exam, so approximately about 8 to 10 questions with 20 marks, and you're given a time allocation of 40 minutes to attempt those. And then finally, you have a case study, which is worth 10 marks. So you'll be required to read the case study and make necessary conclusions or inferences with a time allocation of 20 minutes. So overall, your mid-semester exam carries 50 marks, and moreover, it has a time allocation of 90 minutes or 1.5 hours. Now, if you look at our outline right on top, your mid-semester exam carries 15% towards your coursework. So that's 15%, 5% coming in from the critic writing. So that's 20% altogether. And at the moment, we have 5. By week 6, you'll have 5 lecture-based quizzes. So altogether 7.5%, since it's 1.5% times 5, will give you 7.5% towards your coursework. So by the mid-semester break, you have covered approximately 27.5% of the 50% that contributes towards your coursework. Now, 3 reminders. Okay, if I would very quickly take you to week 1. Now, week 1 lecture quiz, we have a total of 25 students in the class. Only 14 of you have attempted it so far. Likewise, with week 2, week 3, and week 4. Week 2, you do not week 2 and week 3 lecture quiz is basically 1. Okay, so over here as well, I have only 10 students who have attempted the lecture quiz, and week 4, this is last week, is below 10. And week 5, we have another quiz which is piling up. So please, if you're one of those who have not attempted the quiz since week 1, go around, make an effort to attempt it. Now, just reminders, when you are attempting a lecture quiz, go over your lecture notes first, go over your tutorials, and then go attempting your lecture quiz. That will assist you in attempting it accurately. All right, those are all of the reminders that I have so far for CIN 705 week 5. Now, any questions, any queries, anyone? And then we'll proceed with our lecture notes. Just in case, if you're wondering what are the coverage for mid-semester exam, is everything that you have done from week 1 till week 6. That means it's covered till next week, Friday's lecture notes. Okay, so you will need to put in enough efforts to learn and go through all the syllabus from week 1 till week 6. Okay, any questions, any queries? Okay, none. If there are no questions and queries, let's go over our lecture notes. Now, in today's lecture notes, we will be looking at information and information ethics. Moreover, with information and information ethics, we come to a concept called as information security as well. Now, if you look at ethics in a general point of view, now if you have done ETH 501 or EVG 501, ethics, values, and governance, the basic concept that you will learn from there about ethics is that ethic is the difference between what is right and what is wrong. Now, not just right and wrong, but what is morally right and morally wrong. So we'll be looking at that in point of view of how businesses deal with ethics. If we talk about information security, it is all about how you go around securing information in a business point of view. That means you have some sort of information and how do you protect it? Now, what sort of information do businesses normally go and secure? Now, these may be competitive intelligence, okay, some form of business intelligence. These can be some information like competitor information. These can be sales figures, revenue figures, and so forth. So these are some of the things that businesses would generally require to protect. Chapter 4 overview. So section 4.1, we will be looking at ethics, and we will be describing more about what information ethics is and what all is covered under information ethics. The second point from section 4.1 is developing information system policies. So we'll be looking at some policies in relation to information ethics that goes around protecting data or information. Now, data and information, the difference is very clear. Data is something that is raw, that is not processed, whereas information is processed data. Section 4.2, we'll be looking at information security. So we'll be looking at how do we go around protecting intellectual assets. The first line of defense, which is people, and the second line of defense is technology. So we'll be looking at those concepts. Section 4.1, ethics. So the learning outcomes for section 4.1. Now, it's very important for you to go over the learning outcomes as well. Generally, when we go around preparing exam papers, when we go around giving assignments, we'll try to go over the learning outcomes of your lecture notes. And also, these are some of the common learning outcomes that you'll also find in a unit outline or the course outline. So, learning outcome number 1. Explain the ethical issues in the use of information age. So what are some ethical issues in terms of information age? Now, information age, we have learned about it right at the beginning of week 1. Information age is whereby businesses generally conduct their businesses with the maximum utilization and optimization of information. And learning outcome 2, identify the 6 e-policies. We'll talk about e-policies, that's electronic policies, an organization should implement to protect themselves. So let's have a look at these things. Now, information ethics. Ethics, the principles and standards that guide our behavior toward other people. Like mentioned earlier, ethics is generally the difference between what is morally right and what is morally wrong. Information ethics govern the ethical and moral issues arising from the development and use of information technologies, as well as the creation, collection, duplication, distribution, and processing of information itself. So when we talk about information ethics, now it is generally in relation to information. That means the data, all different types of information that you have in your organization. So information ethics is in relation to information and distinguishing what is right and what is wrong. It deals mainly with the creation, collection, duplication, distribution, and processing of information itself. So when you are creating any form of new information, you're collecting it, you are duplicating it. Okay, duplicating means you're copying it. Okay, you're distributing it and processing it. What are some of the set of morally right and morally wrong things one must consider? So that is what information ethics is about. Information ethics continued. Business issues related to information ethics. So we have intellectual property, intangible creative work that is embodied in physical form and includes copyrights, trademarks, and patents. Now, intellectual property basically refers to the creation of the mind, okay, such as any form of invention that comes through your mind. Now, these inventions can be in terms of literary, when I say literary, in terms of reading and writing, in terms of artistic works, these can be designs, and these also can be any form of symbols. Patent is an exclusive right to make, use, and sell an invention and is granted by a government to the inventor. So patent, what happens is generally when you are giving out patents, you are trying to somehow give an exclusive right, or the right is generally given by the government or the patent issuing body to the inventor to protect their intellectual property. For instance, if I come up with a product or with a product name that is very catchy, and the name is also making a big market for itself. So what I can do is I can always go and get a patent done for that particular name and product. So what I will do is it'll have some set of requirements. I have to fulfill those requirements, and then the patent issuer may grant me the patent in which I have certain set of rights to make, use, and sell that particular product or name. For instance, let me tell you this. If somebody comes up with a new soft drink, he or she cannot name it as Coca-Cola. Why? Because there's already a patent under that name. If somebody comes up with a new brand of shoes, they cannot name it as Nike or Adidas. Why? Because it already has a patent. So that is the exclusive right that the inventor has on that particular name or product. Copyright. Copyright is the legal protection afforded an expression of an idea such as a song, video, game, and some types of proprietary documents. Now with copyright, basically it is a legal protection for your intellectual property. Provides the owner with exclusive rights to make copies of creative work, usually for a limited time. Now why a limited time? Because you have to go and renew your copyright issuance or the copyright certification for your product over a certain number of period of time. Information ethics continued. So business issues related to information ethics continued. So we have pirated software, the unauthorized use, duplication, distribution, or sale of copyrighted software. So this is in regards to software. Software is basically a computer program, okay, which performs certain tasks. So if you are copying it without any form of authorization, if you are selling it, if you're distributing it without having a right for it, what you can happen is you may be sued, okay? But when you talk about pirated software, it's just about me having a, let's say I have a licensed version of Microsoft Office, I make copies and sell it for about $20 each. So that's an example of me practicing pirated software. Counterfeit software. Counterfeit software are software that is manufactured to look like the real thing and sold as such. So these softwares, they would very much work and look like the real thing, but in fact they are not. These are generally fake software, okay? So these in overall are given a name as counterfeit. When you talk about counterfeit, generally the concept with counterfeit is fake. Digital rights management, a technological solution that allows publishers to control their digital media to discourage, limit, or prevent illegal copying and distribution. Now, digital rights management is just about you trying to have a good control of your own digital media. So this is basically to have some form of a solution in terms of a technical solution that how any form of digital media can be controlled. When we talk about digital media, anything that is in electronic format, example songs, example movies, example books, research papers, assignments, and so forth. So these is all handled under the concept of digital rights management. Privacy, the right to be left alone when you want to be, to have control over your own personal possessions, and not to be observed without your consent. So privacy is just a legal right of you to be left alone. Moreover, when you talk about privacy, you're generally talking about you having control over something, and it cannot be observed or witnessed without one's consent. That's privacy. Confidentiality, the assurance that messages and information are available only to those who are authorized to view them. So confidentiality would mean you're trying to keep something as a secret, and it is only available for those who are authorized to view it, who are authorized to do some form of action with that particular information or product or service. Information ethics. Individuals form the only ethical component of MIS. Ethically questionable or unaccepted use of IT. Individuals copy, use, and distribute software. Search organizational database for sensitive and personal information. So what I'm reading is these are some of the unethical things that people might do. Okay, and at that point of time, they may or they may not realize that what they're doing may be unethical. For example, individuals copy, use, and distribute software. So you must be thinking, okay, I have this software with me, and my friend needs it. He's let's say very poor, and if I would give to him, that will help him out in terms of him doing his assignments and so forth. Now, if you look in that point of view, emotionally you may be right, but ethically it's wrong for you to copy, use, and distribute software. Search organizational database for sensitive and personal information is whereby you are going into an organization's database or information to go around looking for some form of sensitive information. For example, what is the pay of your colleague at work? Okay, so that it may be also an unethical event that you participate in, and individuals create and spread viruses. Individuals hack into computer systems to steal information. Employees destroy and steal information. So these are some of the ethically questionable or unaccepted use of IT. Now, ethics is something that we can actually imply in our day-to-day lives. For instance, let's say you are in a ICT lab in any of the FNU campuses and you find a USB flash drive. So what will you do? How will you check whose flash drive is that? Would you plug it in and check? Or would you go and once you plug in and check, you see the USB has a list of all the FNU staffs and their salaries? Would you go and view it? Or the USB has the set of grades of the entire class, including yours? So would you go and alter or change something in that? Now, these are some of the things that you may encounter when you are dealing with ethical scenarios. So your point of view may differ from somebody else, but however, when you look at it in an ethics point of view, when you found a USB flash drive, so will you plug it in? Now, when you plug it in, it's very likely that you will see the files in them. But if you won't plug it in, how would you know whose flash drive is that? Sometimes you have the names of the person or probably the student ID of the person renamed as the USB flash drive name. Okay, so these are some of the things or daily things that we may encounter, and these are some places where we may go around applying our ethics. Now, information ethics, acting ethically and legally are not always the same. Very true. You being ethical, you being doing something that is ethical, and you being doing something legal are not always the same. Now let's have a look at this. Now we have 4 quadrants in there: quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Quadrant, 1 square, okay, this 1 quarter, second quarter, this is what quadrant means. So in each and every quadrant, it displays the amalgamation of either ethical and legal, ethical or illegal, legal and unethical, illegal and unethical. Okay, so let's go and discuss these quadrants and look at some possible examples of them. Now, quadrant 1. Now, quadrant 1 displays something is legal and ethical. Now, if I have to go around look for an example of it, so just recently in a press release statement, Amazon is one of the largest e-commerce websites that we have in the world. So in a press release, they stated that they will not misuse any customer data or sell it for any additional bucks. That means what Amazon has said, that all their customer data that is in their databases, they will not misuse it any particular way. Now, this is what they have said in a press conference. So when you look at it, okay, legally, they're doing something right, okay, and ethically, they're doing a right thing as well. Quadrant 2, something that is illegal, but is ethical. Now, if you look at quadrant 2, what happens is that in terms of an example I'm going to give you is Microsoft. Now, what Microsoft recently did is it sold its Gmail address to a marketing company. Okay, so all the Gmail addresses it had, so Microsoft has sold it to a marketing company. Now, if you look at it, now that's illegal. Okay, now that is illegal in terms of they are not supposed to do it. But then they are saying, okay, this is ethical. Now, why it is ethical? Because they have mentioned is that when the users are signing up for an email address, generally they sign in a end user licensing agreement, where you have to go and check in the accept button. So when you check in that accept button, somewhere within that end user licensing agreement, you actually allow Google to sell your email addresses to others for the purpose of marketing. So it's illegal, but it's all they're saying it's ethical because they already have your permission. Quadrant 3, something that is legal but unethical. Okay, now if we look at lawyers, okay, in their scenarios, sometimes they find cases or they fight cases rather, and probably they have to lie about a few things. Now, in legal terms, okay, that's fine, but unethically, in legal terms, that's fine, but in ethical point of view, that is unethical because he or she is actually lying about it. In quadrant 4, something that is illegal and at the same time it is unethical as well. For example, dealing with drugs and stuff. So that is illegal, one, and secondly is unethical as well. So like mentioned earlier, acting ethically and legally are not always the same thing, and there are certain scenarios which can cater for all the different quadrants that we have on the screen at the moment. Now, information does not have ethics, people do. Information doesn't care how it is used. It will not stop itself from sending spam, viruses, or highly sensitive information. Tools to prevent information misuse rather. You have information management, okay, examines the organizational resource of information and regulates its definitions, uses, value, and distribution, ensuring that it has the types of data or information required to function and grow effectively. And you have information governance, a method or system of government for information management and control. Now, when you talk about information management, what you are generally looking at is in terms of you trying to manage information. Now, what it does, it examines the entire organizational resources and see where all it can regulate certain rules for the use, for the value and distribution of the information. And if you look at information governance, so basically it is a method or a system, okay, which governs how information can be managed or controlled. Tools to prevent information misuse. So information compliance, the act of confirming acquiescing or yielding information. So when you look at the word acquiescing, it means affecting with protests. In other words, you try to yield or provide something. Now, with information compliance, it's all about following a rule in relation to information. You comply with a specific type of information. Information secrecy, the category of computer security that addresses the protection of data from unauthorized disclosure and confirmation of data source authenticity. Information secrecy, in simple terms, it is an act to protect data against unauthorized use or any form of disclosure, whereby you try to keep the data protected from any form of unauthorized use. Information property, an ethical issue that focuses on who owns information about individuals and how information can be sold and exchanged. Information property in simple terms, this is the ethics of who owns information, how and what information can be sold and exchanged. Developing information management policies. So organizations strive to build a corporate culture based on ethical principles that employees can understand and implement. So these are some of the principles and policies that organizations generally come up with. You have ethical computer use policy, you have information privacy policy, extractable use policy, email privacy policy, social media policy, workplace monitoring policy. And in the next few set of slides, we'll be looking at each and individual of these 6 types of policies. First one, ethical computer use policy. Ethical computer use policy contains general principles to guide computer user behavior. So this is about you doing what is right and what is wrong. So this policy is basically being listed. Now, over here, when you talk about ethical computer use policy, this is what will be morally right and legally right as well, and it has been documented. The ethical computer user policy ensures all users are informed of the rules and by agreeing to use the system on that basis, concerned to abide by the rules. For instance, if you are in a computer lab in any of the FNU campuses, so there's a set of rules for you to use computers. So you have to comply with the rules and regulations, and those rules and regulations can be counted in as an ethical computer use policy. If I have to break down the examples even further, for example, I may say refrain from playing computer games, okay, in the labs, or refrain from watching movies in the lab. Okay, so these may be some of it. Information privacy policy. Unethical use of information typically occurs unintentionally when it is used for new purposes. Information privacy policy contains general principles regarding information privacy. Now, information privacy policy, if you want to have a look at it in simple terms, these are some generic informations or generic rules in regarding to information privacy. Example, SSN, do you know what SSN is? Social Security Number, okay? Now, it was used to identify those individuals who actually get government retirement benefits. Now, SSN is implemented in overseas countries, especially in the likes of US. So if you are a retiree, and then if you will be issued with a SSN number, and with that SSN number, you get the retirement benefits. But now, if you look at it, this SSN is being utilized as a universal personal ID. Now, when you actually use this as a universal personal ID, that means if somebody asks you for your ID, when you present it to them, now does it maintain the privacy of your information? Probably no. Why? Because you are identified as one of those who are getting a government retirement benefit based on SSN number, social security number. And when you start using your social security number as a universal generic personal ID, now that information is being exposed out to people, and you do not know how people may use it and in what ways. Acceptable use policy. requires a user to agree to follow it to be provided access to corporate email, information systems, and the internet. One of the very good examples of acceptable use policy, IUP, is your end user licensing agreement. Now, in end user licensing agreement, like the example I gave earlier, once you are signing up on Google, okay, you fill in your entire details, and right at the very end, there is a option where you have to tick I agree. Unless until you agree, you are not given an email address. So you have to agree anyway. That means you are agreeing to all of their terms and conditions. Non-repudiation, a contractual stipulation to ensure that e-business participants do not deny their online actions. Now, non-repudiation, okay, basically it's an assurance that someone cannot deny the validity of doing something online. Example, very simple example that I could think of at the moment is, let's say someone mentioned to you in an email that the process is such and that. Now, while actually that person made an error. So when you go back and you tell that person says, no, I have not said that. Then what you can do is you can always go and backtrack and prove the argument. Now, that's an example of non-repudiation, whereby the assurance that someone cannot deny the validity of something that they have done through electronic means. Okay, so non-repudiation. Internet use policy contains general principles to guide the proper use of the internet. I think you should be familiar with it. So if you are using internet, most likely you may have this at work. If you're working, even in FNU, if you're a student, we have the internet use policy, and there are certain things that you cannot do while you are surfing the web. For instance, for student point of view, you cannot go and watch pornography, you cannot go and watch movies, and so forth. At work, probably you're not allowed to use social media because it spoils or brings down your productivity levels. So internet use policy is as such. Now, email privacy policy. Organizations can mitigate the risks of email and instant messaging communication tools by implementing and adhering to an email privacy policy. Email privacy policy details the extent to which email messages may be read by others. Now, email privacy policy is basically the way of you controlling emails that are circulated within the organization. Now, you can also say external to the organization, emails that go from the organization to the other parties, you trying to keep a tab of its privacy. Now, we must understand this. Emails are one of the most unsafest way, or probably they are one of the unsafest means of communication. Why? Because it can be easily read. Now, how can it be easily read? When you are typing an email, somebody may read it. When you are sending it to someone, the recipient, when they are reading it, person on their end, they can also read it. Also, you should know is the workers of an internet service provider, they can also go around reading it. Now, who are internet service providers? Example, Vodafone is our internet service provider. They can tab into your emails. Your organizational's administrator. So if you have an organization, you have a large IT department. So the person who has access to all the computerized systems, they can easily access your emails. Emails can be easily hacked by either software means or hardware means. And moreover, emails can be easily forwarded. For instance, you were on Microsoft Outlook, you have just received an email. Let's say your new contract had come in, and one of your colleagues just sitting next to you wants to read what your contract has. Let's say you leave it open, you do not log out your PC, you go out to restroom. So what he or she might do is quickly forward the email to himself or herself, and at the same time, remove the email from the sent items. So when you come back, you have no track of it. Okay, so emails are one of the most unsafest means. Okay, and also, if you have a smart and intelligent IT person, what he or she could do is they can always go and copy your PST files. Now, PST files, these are the files which are generated through the use of using Microsoft Outlook. Now, remember, when you're using Microsoft Document, you have a file with extension .doc, with Excel.xlsx, okay? Probably with the database or Microsoft Access, ACCDB. Now, with Outlook, you have .pst. So if somebody copies your PST files and keeps it with himself or herself, they can go home, they can open up Microsoft Outlook, and then they can go on opening the PST files, which contains all your emails. Okay, so these are some of the tricky things related to emails, and one must be very, very careful with it. So if you look at the diagram here, okay, now let's go and see how many places is the email stored. So this is you, let's say this is you, sender's computer. So you have your email and you are trying it to a recipient. Let's say your recipient is your friend. Now, when you send emails, so you have emails stored in that computer and it goes into your organization's email server. Okay, so it's also stored there. And then it goes straight away to the recipient's, your friend's email server, where he or she is working. Okay, and from there it goes to their computer. Now in this case, let's say if you are not in a work scenario, if you're directly let's say sending a personal email from your computer at home to someone who is sitting in his or her home, so there will be only one server, and that server will be called an ISP server. That means the internet service provider's server. So with that, the email will be stored in your PC, in the ISP system, and as well as the recipient's computer. So do note that one email stored at 4 different places as per the diagram. Email privacy policy. Now related to emails, we have something called as spam. Spam is unsolicited emails. Another word that you can use for the term unsolicited is irrelevant emails. You must have seen this. You have a Gmail account. There are a lot of marketing emails coming in. People are advertising their products. Somebody selling medicines online. Somebody has told you that you have won $20,000 or $30,000 or $1 million, something as such. These are examples of spam emails. Now, what is the purpose? Now, sometimes the purpose is very handy. Sometimes the purpose is irrelevant. Sometimes the purpose is for malicious intent. For instance, if somebody sends you an email, spam email, just advertising their product, so that is pure marketing purposes. Somebody sends an email and tells you probably that you have won $20 million. Now that is something fishy in there, because you have not done anything. Let's say you have not done anything that could earn you $20 million. Now for you to win $20 million, you won't be given an email just at random. You might have to go and play a lottery or participate in something, and let's say you have not done all these things. So you have not done it. So if you would go and click on the link where it says, you have won $20 million, click here to get your money. So when you click on that link, it will ask you for your credit card details. It will ask you for your bank account details. And also when you click on it, it might release viruses in your computer system. So you need to be careful with these kind of spam emails. Now, anti-spam policy simply states that email users will not send unsolicited emails or spam. So this is where you have a sort of a policy that you will not practice any form of spamming in relation to emails. Now, let's say you are someone who is not sending spam emails, but you are on the receiving end. You always tend to receive spam emails. What do? Now, when you receive emails as such, what you can do is you can filter them, and after filtering it, you can have a separate folder whereby all these spam emails jump into that specific folder. 1. 2, what you can do is you can always block them if you feel that that's very annoying for you. So you can always go to the options section of your email and block such kind of emails or email addresses. Also, you can report it. So when you report in certain email applications, it also stops it from entering into your computer system. And just in case if it's just a marketing kind of email, always go and unsubscribe. Once you unsubscribe, you will not be receiving such emails anymore. Social media policy. If you're a working student, or if you're working somewhere, probably, okay, if you even just a normal student, social media policy, you must have gone across it over. You must have gone over it in one way or the other. It outlines the corporate guidelines or principles governing employee online communications. In simple terms, these are the policies that are stipulated in how do you go around using social media. Now, social media can be in terms of blogs, It can be in terms of message boards. It can be in terms of social networking sites, for example, Facebook, or it can be media sharing sites. So media sharing sites, what are those media sharing sites? Example, YouTube. So when you are actually, or when organizations have these policies in place, so what they're trying to do is they're always trying to continuously monitor and protect their assets within the organization. The major asset that they are trying to protect is the information within the organization. Now, another reason why they may have social media policy is because it wastes downtime. Okay, that means the amount of time an employee takes to complete a task. It reduces productivity hours. Okay, so this, when you have social media which is used on frequent basis, people end up wasting a lot of time on it. So productivity hours is reduced. Moreover, there may be some serious things. Example, cyber stalking. Somebody is stalking you, but for online means. And also, another reason why employees must adhere to social media policy. Let's say you have called in the morning and you have told your supervisor that you're sick. Later during the day, you have posted photographs while you were at movies. Okay, so social media policy plays a key role in the organization, not just to protect the organization, but to protect employees as well. Workplace monitoring policy. Workplace monitoring is a concern for many employees. Organizations can be held financially responsible for their employees' actions. True. For instance, sometimes you may feel some people, let's say very prominent people, they hold key positions in the organizations. So when they write something on social media, when they comment something, or let's say they are very abusive, they bring a bad impression on the organization. And in worst case scenarios, sometimes it can go into stages of lawsuits and so forth. So this sentence is very much true. Organizations can be held financially responsible for their employees' actions. The dilemma surrounding employee monitoring in the workplace is that an organization is placing itself at risk if it fails to monitor its employees. However, some people feel that monitoring employees is unethical. Now, what do you think? Your online activity or your computer, if it is monitored at work, do you think it is ethical or unethical? And sometimes some employees may not find it comfortable while somebody is monitoring them, or it may seem that they are working under a lot of pressure or so forth. So in that time, it may be unethical. But if you look at in the other way around, if you are someone who is misusing your company resources, and you are someone who is representing your organization in many different places in many different ways, so that might be ethical. Now, in simple terms, if we try to conclude this slide, workplace monitoring policy, why do we have it? To track employee activities. It prevents reputation loss or lawsuits. Okay, and to worst case scenario, sometimes it can prevent cyber stalking. Okay, if people are, let's say, if you are someone who is very quiet natured and there is someone who is stalking you through electronic means, so it could be tracked through the use of workplace monitoring. Even discrimination, okay, racial discrimination or gender discrimination or unethical behavior or sexual harassment, all those things could be monitored through the use of such policies. Workplace monitoring policy, information technology monitoring, tracks people's activities by such measures as a number of keystrokes, error rate, and number of transactions processed. So IT monitoring or information technology monitoring, okay, it tracks through the use of keystrokes. When you talk about keystrokes, the amount of typing that you do on the keyboard, so that's keystroke. Okay, it tracks through the use of that. It also may track through the use of the amount of error that you make or the number of transactions that you process by a specific time. So that is information technology monitoring. If you look at employee monitoring policy, now it explicitly state how, when, and where the company monitors its employee. In other words, you are keeping track of your employee. So the difference between the two is one of it is basically hardware based and the other one is employee based. machine versus people-based. Workplace monitoring policy. Common monitoring technologies include, so we have a keylogger or a key trapper software. Keylogger is basically a software that record every keystroke or mouse click. Okay, when we say keystroke, it's just a way of saying you typing something to the use of keyboard. So when you are typing something or clicking anywhere on the screen, it's been all tracked. Hardware keylogger, okay, it does the same thing as keylogger, but there's a specific device that captures keystrokes as it journeys from keyboard to the motherboard of the computer system. So as soon as you type something, let's say you type letter A, B, C on the keyboard. So this is how it goes. So your computers basically have something called as a buzz line. So when you type something on a keyboard, so through the buzz line, it goes into your computer's motherboard. So while it is transferring A, B, C into the bus line, so this hardware keeps a track of it. And then you have cookie. No, you don't have to eat this cookie. Now this cookie is basically a file deposited in a computer's hard drive that keeps information about a website user. And then you have adware. Adware is basically they generate ads that installs themselves on a computer when a person downloads something. And you have spyware. Spyware, these are software hidden in downloads and tracks online activities of users. So when you download something from the web, so you have some hidden softwares with it. Now, one of those may be a spyware, and what it will do is it will track all your online activities. This can also include you processing your credit card online, or you logging into your online banking accounts, and username and password could be easily tracked. Weblog. Weblog basically consists of a series of web activities of a user when he or she visits a particular website. Log means you are tracking something or you are writing something down. That's log. So weblog, in general, set of activities of what a user is doing online. And then you have clickstream. Last week we did have a look at clickstream. So clickstream basically tracks record of web surfing sessions, but in much more greater details. So it sees the number of websites that you visited. It sees how long you have visited the website, what all did you view, and what was all that you purchased. So that's clickstream. Now that concludes section 4.1. Now from section 4.1, let me just go back and tell you some important things that you should know. Now there are a lot of things, a lot of information in theoretical concepts. What I will do is I will just call out which things are important that you should generally know. Okay, and the rest will be treated as supplementary materials. You should know what is the difference between ethics and information ethics. So do put a note somewhere or highlight this up in your slides. You should know what is ethics and what is information ethics and the difference between the two. It's very simple. If you know the difference between, if you know what ethic is actually is, you should be able to define information ethics. This is just ethics related to information. You should know what is intellectual property, what is copyright. Okay, intellectual property, copyright, know them. Okay, also please do note what are digital rights management, pirated software and counterfeit software. These are very basic things which you should know by now. Okay, but if you are not aware of these things, do note it down somewhere. Privacy and confidentiality, these are also generic things. Now, you should know some of the policies that are practiced in organizations to manage information. And these are such: you have ethical use, you have information privacy, you have acceptable user policy, you have email privacy policy, social media policy, and workplace policy. Know all of them. Now, you don't have to literally know the long version of it. Know it in simple terms, what ethical computer use policy is, okay? And what are the other forms of policies. For example, information privacy policy, know the simple definition of that as well, and so forth. Another thing which I had marked as important was these things. Do know what are some of the common monitoring technologies that can be used in an organization. Now, remember this, All these things that we've discussed, keylogger, hardware keylogger, cookie, adwares, spyware, weblog, and clickstream. Now, these things were developed at the very beginning to assist people, to assist organizations, to assist businesses. However, over time, these are some of the things which has become a set of tools that can be used to breach security over time. Okay, so we'll discuss this in the next few sets of slides, how these things actually disrupt the normal day-to-day business and invade information privacy. Okay, but do know this, okay, and I do want you to actually keep this in mind, that these things were initially created to assist organizations and not to go around cause damage to them. Section 4.2, information security. So in section 4.2, we have the following learning outcomes: describe the relationships and differences between hackers and viruses, describe the relationship between information security policies and an information security plan, provide an example of each of the three primary security areas: authentication and authorization, 2, prevention and resistance, and 3, detection and response. So we'll have a look at all these things in the next few set of slides. Protecting intellectual assets. Now, before we actually go around knowing what is intellectual assets, okay, and how we go around protecting them, you need to know what is intellectual capital. So we'll read this out and then I'll explain it to you. Organizational information is intellectual capital. It must be protected. So when you talk about an intellectual capital, you're talking about anything that holds value to an organization. For example, employees hold a lot of value to an organization. A certain set of skill or knowledge or business training, all these things, they hold a lot of value to the organization. And we must know that these things need protection. From whom? From outsiders, from intruders, from competitors. And how do we protect those things? Is the use of information security measures. So that comes or derives us to the term information security. Information security is the protection of information from accidental or intentional misuse by persons inside or outside an organization. So there is someone either who is outside the organization or someone who is inside the organization, and they are sort of breaching the information security, breaching the information or information security. Now, generally, when you would do adequate research in terms of information security, you will find that the major threat is not the outsiders, but rather the people who are inside the organization. Why? Because they have information already in hand. It's just a matter of them in terms of how to use and misuse it. That's where ethics come in. Morally, what is right and what is wrong. So people need to be well trained. People need to be well taken care of as well. And people need to also use senses in terms of their brains very, very well in terms of how they will protect the organization and the information within the organization. Downtime refers to a period of time when the system is unavailable. Okay, downtime is pretty simple. So something goes down, let's say Moodle goes down. So we'll say, the downtime for it is 2 hours. So 2 hours Moodle was down, Moodle wasn't working, or Moodle was unavailable. And these are some of the sources of how you can have unplanned downtime. So we have bomb threat all the way down to wind. Okay, you have flood as well, fire, chemical spin, construction, corrupted data, earthquake, electrical short, and so forth. Okay, there are so many different reasons why you may have an unplanned downtime. Protecting intellectual assets. How much will downtime cost your business? Okay, so let's have a look at that. So downtime, like we mentioned, a certain period of time when a system has become unavailable. So how much it can cost you? Now, it can cost you financial performance. Your revenue may go down, your cash flow may go down, Your payment guarantees may go down, your credit rating may go down, and your stock price may go down. Okay. Now, if you look at from a simple customer point of view, what we can think is probably when let's say you're planning to, let's say you are a business and you buy a lot of things from Alibaba.com and you sell it here in Fiji. So today is a day whereby you were supposed to order a few items. So it will come to Fiji, let's say within a week, and you are deciding to put those items on your shop or in your shop. Okay. So Alibaba goes down. So what happens is that in your business point of view, your revenue is lost for a few days. Why is lost for a few days? Because it will delay a few days. Your cash flow may slow down. Okay. Moreover, your credit ratings may also go down. So therefore, this is how the system's downtime may affect your financial performance. Revenue, like loss, you have compensatory payments, lost future revenue, you have billing losses, investment losses, lost productivity. I want you to concentrate on lost productivity. Now, how does lost productivity contribute to revenue? Okay, how does it affect revenue? It affects revenue in such terms. Productivity is normally associated with people who are working within the organization. So if a system is down, that means they will be paid for that day for doing absolutely nothing. Why? Because it's not their problem that the system is down, it's the organization's fault. Okay, so in other words, the organization will be paying them to do something while they're actually not. Moreover, once the productivity goes down, so whatever product or services they were producing, also that decreases. So you have an eventual loss in revenue. Now look at the other quadrant here, damaged reputation, customers, suppliers, financial markets, banks, business partners. So let's say you are a very big organization. Let's say you are Vodafone Fiji, and then your network is down for 2 days. What happens? Your reputation goes down. People will jump over to digital, and you know how things can go up on social media. People will talk bad about you. Your customers will talk bad about you. Now, Vodafone does not only provide businesses the to the best in class customers like normal customers like us. We use it in terms of just for calling and internet. They have business class customers as well, okay, whereby the entire business is dependent on their network. So they may end up losing those kind of customers as well. Moreover, they may end up losing business partners. And then finally, your downtime may also affect other expenses, temporary employees, equipment rentals, overtime costs, extra shipping charges, travel expenses, and legal obligations. So these are some of the other things that may incur. So other expenses that may incur because your system was down for a specific number of hours or for a specific time. Security threats caused by hackers and viruses. So experts in technology who use their knowledge to break into computers and computer networks, either for profit or just motivated by challenge. So hackers, now first of all, when we talk about hackers, there's a very negative vibe when it comes to hackers, because when we look at the word hacker, it simply means that these are bad classed people who are very bad, they do bad things. Okay, yes, they do bad things. However, there are different types of hackers. Moreover, also these hackers, these are not ordinary people. They are very, very smart. Okay, now you have to be a computing science genius in order for you to hack something. So the simple definition for hacker is a person or a expert who hacks into a computer system out of intellectual curiosity. Intellectual curiosity, that means they want to try new things. They want to do something that nobody's ever done. They want to challenge themselves out. So these are hackers. And there are many different types of hackers listed there. You have a black hat hacker. There's also a white hat hacker as well. You have a cracker. You have a cyber terrorist. You have hacktivists. You have script kiddies or script bunnies, and a white hat hacker is also there. Let's go and quickly have a look at these definitions. I'll just try to come up with simple definitions so that you can know what these are. So first of all, let's have a look at white hat hacker. So a white hat hacker, basically they work at request of the owners. Okay, so what they will do is they'll hack into a computer system at the request of the owner of the system. Why? to find out the faults and to find out the system vulnerabilities. So what happens is these are intellectual people, okay, computer science experts. So they will hack into a system and then notify the user, not the user, sorry, notify the owner what all problems exist in a computerized system. You have black hat hackers. Now, they also hack into a computerized system, but in this case, they do not have permission of the owner. They break into a computer system, they try to look around the system, they try to steal and destroy information. After that, you have a cracker. A cracker is also same as a hacker. Okay, now these are also smart people. They hack into computer systems. And the difference between a hacker and a cracker is hacker basically hacks into a computer system out of intellectual curiosity to test their knowledge. Okay, but a cracker hacks into a computer system out of malicious intent. When I say malicious intent, basically they have a thing in their mind to go around steal information and sell it to somebody else out of criminal intent to perform some form of damage to the organization. So that's the difference between hacker and cracker. You have cyber terrorists. Cyber terrorists basically harm people or destroy critical system or information and use internet as a weapon of mass destruction. So what they do is basically they cause harm to people through the use of technology. You also have hacktivists. Now, hacktivists are philosophical or political reasons to break into a computerized system. Now, hacktivist has been derived from the word activist. So, activist is a person who would actually go around and protest about something. So, hacktivists, very much similar to activists, they also would like to protest about certain things. But what they do here is they break into computer systems. You have script kiddies or script bunnies. So script kiddies, aka script bunnies, what they do is they find a hacking code on the internet and they click and point their way into a computerized system. Okay, so it's just like these are kids, let's say people who are still at the early career stage of computer science. So they learn a few codes here and there from the internet, and then they try to break into a computer system just by doing a set of trial and error. So these are script kiddies. Viruses, software written with malicious intent to cause annoyance or damage. Now, the thing here we need to note is malicious intent. That means to cause damage or annoyance even. Now, you have quite a different types of viruses. You have worm, malware, adware, spyware, ransomware, and scareware. Let's quickly have a look at those in simple terms. So worm virus, what it does, it spreads itself. It spreads from one file to the other. It spreads from one computer to the other. So when it spreads, it tends to cause damage to those particular file or this particular computer. Malware comes from the word malicious software. So it is intended to damage or cause damage and also to disable computer systems. You have adware, comes from the word advertisement and software. Okay, so adware, it presents ad without the consent of the owner. So you must have noticed a lot of adwares when you download a file. So right at the taskbar of your computer on your desktop, you'll have some advertisements that will keep on popping in and you have very little control over it. So those are examples of adware. And then you have spyware. Spyware comes from the words spy and software. Softwares, those who spy on your computer system. Now, how do they enter your computer system? They come with downloads. So when you're downloading something, so this particular software is hidden with the downloads, and then it tracks your users' activities without their knowledge. You have ransomware. Ransomware comes with the word ransom and software. Ransom it's just like you kidnap someone and you ask money. That's ransom and software. So ransomware together, what it does, it infects a computer system and then it asks for money. It's just like this. Somebody has hacked into my computer system and they've told me I have done this. I have hacked the computer system. And if you do not give me this much of money by this time, I will release your personal information on the web. And what people do, a lot of people tend to give away a lot of money with it. Now, it's very much common in countries like India. It's very much common in countries like the States, United States. Scareware. Now, scareware comes from the word scare and software. Now, what it does, it tricks individual into giving up critical personal information. Now, it can be counted as a sort of ransomware as well. Why? Because first it scares people. Now, a very common practice with scareware was happening in YouTube few years back, about 3 or 4 years now. So what people would do is sometimes they have these online dating or chatting sites. Okay, so they would go around chatting and probably exchanging pictures, probably some very, very personal pictures with one another. And then the other person on the other side, person who is part of that online chatting site, what will do is he or she will go and scare the individual by telling, okay, what I will do, you have to pay me this much of money, or I will release this on your Facebook account, or I will release this on your Twitter account, and so forth. So out of scare, what that particular individual does ends up paying certain amount of money. So there are more different types of viruses. You have backdoor program. Now, backdoor program, basically over here, you have a virus which comes through emails, which comes through downloads, and it opens a way in a network for future attacks. Now, while all these things are happening, the user is completely unaware of such effects. And then you have denial of service attack. We also call it as DOS attacks. Now, DOS attacks floods your computer system with so much requests that it slows down the entire system and eventually crashes it. Distributed denial of service attack. Now, it's very much similar to DOS attack, but over here, distributed denial of service attack occurs from multiple computers. When you look at DOS, you have only one computer which floods your own computer with requests. With distributed denial of service attack, you have multiple computers sending so much requests to your computer that eventually crashes. So which one of these attacks are more effective in terms of causing damage quickly, faster, and more damage is DDoS, okay? Distributed denial of service attack. Then you have polymorphic virus. Now, polymorphic virus, what it does is basically it changes its forms as it propagates. Now, when we say polymorphic, that means it is just a way of polymorphic is a graphical term, basically used with graphics. It's just like you're polymorphing something. When we say polymorph, what it simply means is that you have one image, okay, and that image can be transformed into something else. So the same thing happens here, but it's a virus. So you have a software which seems like a Microsoft Word, but when you eventually click on it, it releases more virus in your computer. Then you have Trojan horse. It hides inside another software and or product and pretends to be a usual software while it is not. Very much similar to a polymorphic virus. And worms, we've just spoken about it. Worm basically it spreads itself from one file to another and from one computer to the other. Now, these are the different types of viruses that are generally associated with businesses and also associated with computer science. Now, note this. All these viruses, now, it's not being stated just by that, or it's not a random virus that has been listed. This has been backed up by research. Over a period of time, businesses have gone through this. They have received worm viruses, malware, adware, spyware, ransomware, scareware, DOS, backdoor program, DDoS, polymorphic virus, Trojan horse virus, and worms. And I would suggest for you to actually know these viruses and know what they end up doing to your computer systems and what they can do to the information within an organization. Now, how viruses spread? Let's have a look at the diagram. You have a hacker who creates a virus and attaches it to a program, document, or website. And what he or she does, it releases on a server. Now, when it goes on a document, that means it is stored in the computer's hard drive. When it stores to a website, what happens? It goes on a web server. Now, there's a difference between the two. When it's stored in your own hard drive, it basically affects your own computer only at that point in time. So unless and until you start sending emails, unless and until you transfer files from your computer to the other, it would not affect other computers except for yours only. However, if the virus is on a web server, it's a big problem. Why? Because a website can be viewed by so many people at once, probably thousands or millions of websites. Just imagine how many people must be viewing Facebook per day. Thousands, millions per day, or probably billions per day. So whoever sees that website, that particular individual or all those individuals will get viruses in their own computer as well. So there's a big difference between the two. So which one is more effective? Actually hooking up a virus into a website. Now, in terms of an individual, now this diagram is showing virus spreading from an individual. Now, what happens here is this is denoting a work scenario whereby a person has a virus in his or her computer. So this is a server. So the file is stored within the server. So the person retrieves the file from the server or sends file to the server, and others are accessing the same file from the server. So while they're accessing it, the virus spreads. And from here, it will spread to many, many more. So what could be the end result? The end result could be either the computer slows down, either the computer crashes, your hard drive crashes, or the file is damaged. Those would be the worst case scenarios. In personal case, if you are using a computer and all of a sudden you'll notice that your computer is slowing down, that's because the cause of it is because of a virus. So what you need to do is you need to ensure that your antivirus programs are fully updated. Moreover, if a computer slows down, not always it could be the case of a virus. It could be that one of your hardware within your computer system is giving up. That might also slow. Or overall, the operating system that you're using, for example, if you're using Windows 10, so it's not updated, your computer will slow down as well. So those are some of the things that you should know when your own computer slows down. Security threats posed by hackers. Now, security threats to e-businesses include, so these are some of the different types of security threats. First one we have is elevation of privilege. Elevation, raise something up of privilege. So when you talk about privileges with information systems, we're talking about the level of access that you have for a computerized system. So when somebody elevates his or her privilege, so what he or she does is the user misleads a system into granting unauthorized rights or access. Let's say I am a common user. Let's say you are a student user. All of a sudden, you do some hacking and you give yourself an access of a administrator. That means you can control everyone's computer within FNU. That's elevation of privilege. Hoaxes. Hoaxes is basically they attack a computerized system. What they do is they transmit a virus hoax with a real virus attached to that particular hoax. Hoax, another name for hoax would be is just like somebody is trying to fool you up. Okay. Now, with these with information related hoaxes or computer science related hoaxes, this is a way in which hackers might attack your computer system. Because they send you email. Within an email, there's an attachment with which probably it's very important. So you open it up. So as soon as you open it up, it's completely blank, and you close it, and you feel, oh, somebody must have sent it by mistake. But when you had opened up that particular email or attachment, what had happened was virus would have gone to your computer's hard drive by then. Malicious code includes a variety of threats such as virus, worms, and Trojan horse. You have packet tampering. Packet tampering is when we say packet is generally related to networks. So when you are sending data from one computer to the other, that data is transferred in the form of packets. So if I am sending an email from my computer to, let's say, Tom, so as soon as the data that I'm sending leaves my computer network, it is transferred to the form of packet to Tom's computer. So while it is about to reach Tom's computer, somebody alters the contents of the packet, or somebody accesses the packets as it travels over the network to Tom. So that's packet tampering. Sniffer. Sniffer comes from the word sniffing. That means you sniff something. So sniffer, in computing terms, it is a program that can monitor data traveling over a network. You have spoofing. Spoofing is basically forging of the retainee address of an email address appears to come from someone else than the actual sender. Now, spoofing is me creating an email address, and that email address is so closely related to an original email address. Let's say mine is munil.gounder@fnu.ac.fj. So that email may be munil.gounder.fnn.ac.fj. And sometimes while you're receiving it, as soon as you see munil.gounder.fn, you may realize, oh, this is Munil. So he has sent me an email. So therefore, you think that this is the actual sender while it is not. Somebody fools you to get some form of personal information. Splogs are basically blogs or blog articles which are fake. Comes from blogs. So splogs are basically blogs where the articles are fake. And we have spyware. We looked at spyware. It's a computer software that tracks on your day-to-day activities within your computer. So while it's tracking it, it can use the information and basically make it used for any malicious intent, or they can extract the information, sell it to others, give it out to others. First line of defense, people. Organizations must enable employees, customers, and partners to access information electronically. The biggest issue surrounding information security is not technical, but the people issue. Okay, now in this slide, we're looking at, and we'll see that information leakage or problems to information security is not always technical. Technical part is less, it's more of the people part. It's the people inside the organization who cause more issues. First of all, it's insiders, people who are working within the organization. Like I mentioned earlier, what these people would do, they have the information in hand and they can play around with it. They can give it out for others. Let's say you have an employee who is the marketing manager, and the other competitive company gives him a large sum of money to rebuild their marketing strategy. He or she may sell it. Okay, so those are insider problems. Then you have social engineering. Social engineering is basically a broad range of malicious activities accomplished through human interactions. Now, social engineering, the word comes from social, is just like you have a lot of malicious activities which are caused by people interacting with other people. It may be in terms of social media, it may be in terms of IM, instant messaging, or it may be just in terms of people communicating with other people verbally. So while they're communicating, they may end up revealing some information that they shouldn't. It's very common. Think of it. You are friends with someone, and this may be the normal case. Sometimes you come to home from work, you're friends with someone, you start telling them what all is happening in their organization, in your own organization rather. And then that person tells you about their organization. And then eventually you end up revealing some things that you shouldn't. So that is an example of social engineering. Another thing is dumpster diving. Now dumpster means like a rubbish bin. Okay, dumpster diving is going through a person's or a business's trash to find information, can be used to attack a computer network. Now, what happens in dumpster diving is, let's say somebody is hacked into someone's computer, or somebody is accessing another colleague's computer, okay, and goes to his or her trash bin or recycle bin that we have in our computer systems. Okay, so what he or she may do is get some files from there and find the information that can go around later on, causing problems for others within the organization. Next one is pretexting, is inventing scenarios to convince victim to release confidential information. Now, pretexting is just like it's part of social engineering, but it's just like you are trying to be very friendly with someone all of a sudden, and you're trying to be so convincing that they eventually end up revealing some confidential information that they shouldn't. And these are some of the issues that are generally people related. Then we have some issues which are technology related. Okay, that's the second line of defense. And the three primary information technology security areas, you have authentication and authorization, which generally deals with people. You have prevention and resistance, which generally deals with data. And then you have detection and response. So looking at authentication and authorization, when you talk about authentication, authorization, the word authentication means how genuine, how original something is. Okay, authenticate. Authorization is you giving somebody access to something. Now, things that come under authentication and authorization, first of all, is identity theft. Identity theft is the forging of someone's identity for the purpose of fraud. Is you are trying to impersonate someone when you actually not that person. And some of the ways in which you can partake in identity theft is, first of all, through the use of phishing. We pronounce this as phishing, by the way. Now, phishing actually comes from the actual fishing term. You're trying to fish for something, okay, in the sea. It actually comes from that term, but over here, this is through electronic means. So what happens in phishing is somebody tries several techniques to gain personal information, and which ends up in identity theft. And the common means of that happening is usually through emails. Now, let's say I receive an email from ANZ. So ANZ tells me, dear Mr. Gounder, you need to renew your username and password because of such reason. Let's say the reason is because we have recently updated our system. Please click on the below link and update your username and password. Now, you should always in your mind, banks wouldn't send you email to tell you to update your username and password. They will call you directly to the bank. They will not ask you to click on a specific link on email. Let's say I have forgotten about that part. So what I do is I click on the link, I enter my old username and my old password and my new password, and I click on authenticate and then re-enter my password, and done, submitted. Next day, when I log into my online banking account, all the funds are missing. So what somebody has done, they have sent me a fake email, and they have sent me an email in such a way that it seems like a genuine ANZ email, seems like a genuine ANZ website, while it is not. I've entered the username and password. They've tracked it through the use of a key logging software, and using that, they have taken out all the money from my bank account. So that's an example of phishing. Farming, what it does, it reroutes requests to a false website. Now, going back to my example, so an email was sent. When I click on the link, it opens a website. Now, the website that opens up, it seems like a genuine ANZ website, but it's a fake website. Okay, so that's an example of farming. It reroutes requests to a false website. Next up is you have a socket puppet marketing. Now, socket puppet marketing, you must have seen this on Facebook, okay? But I'll give out the definition first. Is a use of false identity to artificially stimulate demand for a product or service. Example, you advertising something on Facebook using a false identity. It's pretty common. Sometimes people do not want to show others that you're selling items. Sometimes they're too ashamed to show others that you're selling items on Facebook. So what you do is you create a false ID, okay? But over here, the ID is of someone who already exists. So with that false ID, you try to sell things online, on Facebook or on any platform. So that's an example of a sock puppet marketing. And then you have finally astroturfing. Astroturfing is artificially stimulating online conversation and post reviews about a product or service or a brand. It's just like you are creating an artificial system, let's say an online chat or a software. So using that software, what it does, it goes and automatically reviews your own product and gives it a high rating, while actually it's just you giving the rating, but through the use of a software. That's an example of astroturfing. Now, you have to know what is identity theft, and in general, you should know what all these four stand for: phishing, farming, socket, sorry, not socket, but sock, puppet marketing, and astroturfing. Now, authentication, a method for confirming user's identity. And then authorization is the process of giving someone permission to do or have something. The most secure type of authentication involves something the user knows, something the user has, something that is part of the user. Let's have a look at the next few slides and we'll know what it means. So something that the user knows. So the user generally knows his or her username and password. This is the most common way to identify individual users and typically contains a user ID and password. For example, if you want to access Moodle and to actually authenticate and authorize that you are the true user, you have to enter a username and password. This is the most ineffective form of authentication. Let me repeat that. This is the most ineffective. Why? Keylogger. Any keylogger software, any hardware keylogger, any spyware would go end up tracking that. Now, what about, now you must be thinking, okay, so that means my data on Moodle is insecure. It's not secure at all. No, it is secure. How it is secure? Through the use of SSL certificates. Remember, we were talking about it last week. HTTPS, so the place where you have S, that means you have a security certificate attached to it. It becomes difficult or nearly impossible for any form of hacking to take place when you have a security certificate. Over 50% of help desk calls are password related. Okay, something that the user knows, okay, such as a user ID and a password. Smart cards and tokens are more effective than user ID and password. Okay, so instead of you entering the username and password, smart cards and tokens are more effective. So tokens, small electronic device that change user password automatically. Now, I don't know if you've seen tokens or not. It will be just like a small device, similar size to a flash drive, and it will look similar to that as well. It'll have a small screen on top of it. So what will happen is it will be timed. Okay, so what you have is basically the transmitter and the receiver would actually be attached to an organization. So in the transmitter, you have a small screen, and the small screen will show that the password keeps on changing within certain number of time. So here's a catch. When the password changes in your transmitter, the password also changes in the receiver. So let's say you've come home next morning. When you go back, your password is changed about 70 or 80 times. When you go back to your workplace, when you try to enter into your office, then you'll see that your token will have a password. So you have to manually enter that password into the receiver. So once it matches, only then it will allow you in, else it won't. Likewise, you have a smart card, a device that is around the same size as a credit card, containing embedded technologies that can store information in small amounts of software to perform some limited processing. Now, smart card, they also work like tokens, transmitter and receiver, but this is a bit bigger in size, just like your debit card, okay, your bank card, or probably your license card, driving license card, that size. It has a small chip attached to it, and the chip is a computerized chip. So it will basically go and keep on changing the username and the password. Something that is part of the user, such as a fingerprint or voice signature. Now, this is very common through the use of biometrics. This is by far the best and most effective way to manage authentication. Biometrics, the identification of a user based on physical characteristics such as fingerprint, iris, face, voice, or handwriting. That means you are using your physical characteristics, your body parts, to identify yourself. Now you might say, okay, the fingerprints may be similar for some people. No, it's not similar. Scientifically proven, none of the fingerprints are similar for any individual person at a point in time. Now, if people feel that, there's a procedure in which what you can do is you can have multiple prints on that receiver. Okay, so or probably you can have combination of fingerprint and face scan. So that will resolve your problem. And in movies, you must have seen sometimes they have a plastic sticker. So that sticker basically would track in the prints of your thumb, and then you can actually put it on the thumbprint scanner. No, that doesn't work. It's movies. Those things happen in movies. In actual, it doesn't. Okay. Unfortunately, this method can be costly and intrusive. Okay. It's it's so far the best and most effective way to control authentication. However, it's costly. Now, how can it be intrusive? Intrusive from an insider point of view. So the person who is the administrator of that particular machine, what he or she could do is always go and play around with your data. Your data basically would mean is your ID, you will have an assigned username, and then your thumbprint. They can always go and delete the thumbprint file, so you won't be able to basically go and have access to it. Or what they can do is they can replace their thumbprint with your own. They can replace their thumbprint with yours. So instead of you entering, okay, he or she will enter, but it'll basically pick up your name. All right. So let's say if you try to take out a report later onwards, so in that report it will show that you have entered at this particular point in time, while in actual it was the other person. Prevention and resistance. Prevention and resistance technologies stop intruders from accessing and reading data. Privilege escalation. So privilege escalation, a network intrusion attack that takes advantage of programming errors or design flaws to grant the attacker elevated access to the network and its associated data and applications. So this is where your privilege, your access levels is being escalated or increased. Now, I think we did go over it right at the very beginning. So with privilege escalations, each and every user has certain level of access to the system. So you, for example, you have a student level access at FNU. So somehow or the other, you hack through it and you give yourself administrator level of access. So when you have the administrator level of access, you can always go and modify your grades, okay? Now, privilege escalation comes in two forms. So first of all, we have vertical privilege escalation, and the other one, we have horizontal privilege escalation. With vertical, attackers give themselves higher level of access. Example, from a simple user to an administrator level of access. So that's vertical, higher level of access. With horizontal privilege escalation, same level of access, but use identity for another user. Now, what happens here is over here, the attacker gives himself or herself same level of access, but imitates the identity of somebody else. For instance, my name is Tom, so I am the hacker. So what I do is I create another profile of, let's say, my colleague Peter, and I give Peter the same access as mine. But what I'm doing is instead of using my access, I end up using Peter's access for doing some form of illegal work. That's horizontal privilege escalation. Downtime can cost an organization anywhere from about $100 to $1 million per hour. Now, this is for those companies, especially who are operating in very large firms, and also for those who are dealing with online-based businesses, example, Amazon, AliExpress, eBay. Now, these websites, for example, Amazon, AliExpress, eBay, you'll hardly notice these websites are ever down, okay? Because they have so much of multiple databases, multiple servers, and as soon as one would go down, the other would click in automatically. So they are so organized. Technologies available to help prevent and build resistance to attacks include content filtering. That means you will try it with content filtering. What you do is you filter the content. So if based on the filtering rules, if something seems malicious, something seems wrong or irrelevant, that could be stopped from entering into the network. You have encryption. Now, encryption is basically a process whereby a simple plain text is scrambled up and is unreadable to someone whom it is not intended to get it. Okay, so let me repeat that. Encryption, it is a process whereby you have a set of plain text. So that text is all scrambled up, and it is scrambled up into an unreadable form. That means by mistake, if you receive that file, you will not be able to read it. People who will be able to read it are those who have access to decrypt. So encrypt, opposite is decrypt. So encrypt is converting from plain text to scrambled text. Decrypt is from scrambled text, you convert back to its original form. And finally, you have firewalls. Firewalls are basically hardware and software tools that monitors the traffic on your network. Prevention and resistance continued. You have spam, a form of unsolicited email. Unsolicited means irrelevant. We've talked about this. Control filtering prevents emails containing sensitive information from transmitted and stops spam and viruses from spreading. Personal identifiable information, PII. Okay, any data that could potentially identify a specific individual. You have sensitive PII, and then you have non-sensitive PII. With non-sensitive PII, it is information that is transmitted without any encryption. These are just general information which wouldn't make much difference if a person has received it without any authorization. Okay, non-relevant information. Okay, or just simple stuffs. For example, somebody sending me email, hi, how are you? Just checking up on you. Okay, so that is nothing important is in that email. Whereas if there is a file which is transferred, an email which is transferred and is labeled as sensitive PII, so these are those information which are transmitted and they contain some form of encryption. And generally, the information that is within that file is confidential information. That means you do not want others to actually go and see it. For example, recipe for Coca-Cola. Who knows the recipe for Coca-Cola? Nobody except for those who are working within the organization and the one who came up with the recipe. Okay, so if somebody is emailing that recipe, it needs to be encrypted. And these are labeled as sensitive, personally identifiable information. Prevention and resistance. If there is any information security breach and the information was encrypted, the person stealing the information will not be able to read it. Okay, so encryption is just a simple method with the use of computer science technologies whereby you convert a plain text and scramble it up and make it unreadable. That means if you open up the file, you will not be able to read what is in there. Now, there are basically certain types of encryptions. You have public key encryption. Public key encryption is it uses a cryptographic system. Okay, cryptographic system is just one of these encryption methods. So it uses cryptographic system and it uses a pair of keys to encrypt and decrypt a file. Okay, and then you have certificate authority. So certificate authority is an entity that issues with a digital certificate. So what is a digital certificate then? Digital certificate certifies the ownership of a public key by the named subject of the certificate. So what happens is with a digital certificate, it gives an ownership of a public key. Now, where do you use the public key? You use it in public key encryption. What is it used for? It is used for encrypting files. So where do you get digital certificate then? You get it from the certificate authority. And here's an example of how it is used. Along with this, now prevention and resistance continued. One of the most common defenses for preventing a security breach is a firewall. A firewall, it is a hardware or software, or it can be a combination of both hardware and software that guards a private network, analyzing the information leaving and entering the network. So what happens with the firewall is that as soon as there is a message that is trying to come in, now this particular hardware software will examine that message and see if it meets a set of configured rules. If it meets the rule, only then it is allowed to receive or enter the organization. If it's not, it's completely discarded away. And an example is given here. Let's say this is the organization. Let's say here am I'm working for this organization and I have set up a firewall. So what happens is any information leaving out of the organization server, it goes to the firewall and the firewall monitors it. Now, this is the catchy part. If there are insiders who are sort of doing things which may not be right, they are doing things which may be considered illegal within the organization, they can easily be trapped within the firewall. Okay, so that's protecting from insiders. Now, how does it protect from outsiders? So let's say somebody sends an email has a virus attached to it. So as soon as it goes through the firewall will try to examine it. Now, based on its examination, it notices that it has a virus to it. Now, how does it know there's a virus to it? Normally, viruses have a .exe file. It's an executable file. So it will be able to detect it. So upon detecting it, what it will do is it will stop that message from entering the organization. So not only a firewall protects you from outside parties, but also the inside parties as well. Detection and response. If prevention and resistance strategies fail and there is security breach, an organization can use detection and response technologies to mitigate the damage. Intrusion detection software features full-time monitoring tools that search for patterns in network traffic to identify intruders. Now, intrusion, that means you get some form of attack from outside. Detection software, so it detects all these types of attacks. Now, what it does, it looks at the pattern of a network. For example, if there is someone who's trying to perform a denial of service attack. So denial of service attack is a computer system which floods your own system with so much requests that it crashes. Now, when such amount of traffic would be coming in, okay, or requests would be coming in to crash your software, this intrusion detection software will be able to detect the patterns in the network. And based on that, what it can do is either it will alert the firewall to stop it, one, or two, the other thing it will do is it will alert the administrator or the organization, and they would be able to stop the attack. So intrusion detection software. From these set of slides that we have learned, there are many different types of attacks, especially in terms of the software that we have and the viruses. Now, these attacks, initially, they were developed for the purpose of helping businesses, but over time, it has turned against the businesses. That means people have started to misuse them. Now, while the misuse had started, all these misuse attempts had their own counterparts such as intrusion detection software. You had firewalls, okay. Moreover, you can make use of these features: encryption, public encryption, certificate authority, and digital certificate. So these are some of the things that protects a business, that protects a organization from all those MIA attacks. Now, let me just quickly go back to where we started from section 4.2. Okay, and let me call out some of the important things from there. Okay, know what information security is. Okay, a simple definition would do. Okay, just a means or methods for an organization to protect their system. Now, the important things I want you to learn is some security threats caused by hackers. Know what a hacker is and the different types of hackers. So you have CAD, you have white hat, you have cracker, saboteurs, hacktivists, script bunnies, aka script kiddies as well. And then you have different types of viruses: worms, malware, adware, spyware, ransomware, scareware. Now, all these are attacks. Now, how do you defend that attacks? You should also know them. So those are what we had discussed right at the very end section of the slide, which I'll get back to just in a while. So these are also different types of viruses: backdoor program, denial of service, DDoS, polymorphic virus, Trojan horse, worms. Please, you have to know in general what these are and what are some of the things that they do to your computer system. Now, security threats on e-businesses, okay? You should also know this: elevation privilege, hoaxes, malicious code, packet tampering, sniffer, spoofing, splogs, spyware. Now, there are two lines of defenses. The first one is people. How do people cause damage to the organization, especially those who are within the organization and outside the organization? And also know what are some form of technologies that you can use to prevent or to defend against attacks. Now, these technologies are in terms of, okay, phishing, farming, soft puppet marketing, and astroturfing. They are attacking. Okay, these are attacking technologies through the use of identity theft. protect, this is what you use. Okay, you can use username and password. You can use tokens. You can use smart cards. You can also make use of biometrics features. Moreover, you can make use of content filtering. Okay, you can make use of personally identifiable information, encryption techniques, and finally, firewall and intrusion detection software. So those things which I've just called out, these are important things that you should know of. Now, generally, this is a lot of theory and a lot of things to take in, okay? Now, what I would suggest is if you're someone who's getting confused with this is not easy, by the way, because these are some of the concepts that many of you are learning for the first time, bearing into mind that nearly 90% of the class are BCom students. Okay, so these might be a bit challenging, but if you're doing IS, okay, you must have gone through some of these concepts anyway. But if you're still finding it confusing, please read them once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Eventually you'll get used to it. All right, everyone. Now, any questions, any queries? Any questions, any queries? Now, if no questions, no queries, this is where we'll knock off the class for today. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you all on Friday. Please keep on working on your critic writing, revise for your mid-semester exam, and also attempt the tutorial. Thank you.